As the disciples rose from their place beneath the olive tree, the air felt different, lighter, yet charged with the wisdom they had just absorbed. They each carried a newfound understanding, but with that understanding came a responsibility. This was not a wisdom to be taken lightly or stored away. It was one they had to live out every day in every moment. Peter, still feeling the weight of his own internal struggles, walked closer to Jesus as they began to move back towards the town. The other disciples trailed behind, deep in thought. There was a quietness in the air, not from weariness but from the gravity of the revelation. "Master," Peter said softly, his voice faltering as he tried to find the right words, "you spoke of balance. But how can we maintain it in our work? There is so much to do, so many souls to reach, so many people who need healing and guidance. Sometimes it feels as if there aren't enough hours in the day to serve everyone and also find time for rest." Jesus turned to Peter, his eyes warm and filled with understanding. "Peter, you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, but that burden was never meant for you alone. You are called to serve, yes, but you are not called to exhaust yourself to the point of breaking." Peter opened his mouth to respond, but Jesus raised a hand gently, signaling for him to listen further. "Consider this, Peter, the world does not rest on your efforts alone. Your heart, filled with love and ambition, can reach many. But if you burn yourself out, what good will you be to those who need you? Who will care for the caregiver if the caregiver does not care for himself?" Peter's brow furrowed as he tried to absorb the meaning of Jesus' words. "But, Lord," he protested, "how can we slow down when there is so much work to be done? If we stop, won't we fail the people who need us?" Jesus smiled gently and motioned for Peter to sit with him on a nearby stone wall overlooking the valley. The other disciples, sensing another moment of deep wisdom, gathered around, sitting in a semicircle, waiting for what their teacher would reveal next. "Let me tell you another story," Jesus said, his eyes sweeping over his beloved disciples. "There was once a farmer, a man wise and diligent in his work. He had many fields and each year, his harvests were plentiful. His neighbors marveled at his ability to produce so much from his land. They asked him for advice and he was always generous in sharing what he knew. The disciples listened closely, knowing that this story, like all of Jesus' stories, would reveal something profound. The farmer worked hard from dawn to dusk," Jesus continued, "but there came a time when he noticed something. Year after year, though his harvests were bountiful, the soil became more difficult to till, and the crops seemed to grow weaker. He had been pushing the land to its limits, planting and reaping without giving it time to rest." Peter, who had grown up as a fisherman, immediately understood the parallel. The sea, too, could be overfished, its bounty taken for granted until one day there was nothing left. "One day," Jesus said, "the farmer's old friend, a fellow farmer from another village, came to visit. He noticed the weariness in his friend's eyes and the strain on his land. 'My friend,' the old farmer said, 'why do you push yourself and your land so hard? Even the earth needs time to breathe, to renew itself.' The younger farmer, though exhausted, protested. 'But if I let the land rest, how will I feed my family? How will I survive the seasons if I do not plant every seed I can?' The older farmer smiled. 'I too thought this way once. But I learned that to force the land to give more than it can is to strip it of its very life. If you do not let the soil rest, it will eventually fail you. You must practice patience. Let the earth recover, and it will reward you many times over.' The younger farmer, though hesitant, trusted his friend's wisdom. That year he let one of his fields lay fallow, giving it time to renew. To his amazement, when he returned to plant the following season, the earth was richer, the crops stronger, and the harvest more plentiful than ever before." Jesus paused, letting the story sink in. The disciples could feel the weight of his words, the metaphor unmistakable. They too were like the land. Their bodies, minds, and spirits could only give so much before they needed rest and renewal. Peter, ever earnest, leaned forward, his face a mixture of realization and uncertainty. "Lord, I see now that we must rest as the land rests. But how can we know when it is time to rest and when it is time to work? Jesus looked at him with deep compassion. The answer, Peter, lies not in your mind but in your heart. Just as the land shows signs of wear, so too does your spirit. When you feel joy in your work, when you serve with love and not out of obligation, then you are in balance. But when your soul begins to feel heavy, when your tasks seem burdensome and your heart is weary, that is when you must rest. John, who had always been sensitive to the needs of others, spoke up next. But, Master, what if others need us during those times? How can we rest when there are still so many who suffer, so many who are lost? Jesus' expression softened further, and his voice became almost a whisper. John, there will always be those in need. But do you not see? If you are not whole, how can you help heal the broken? If you are exhausted, how can you give strength to the weary? You must first care for yourself so that you may care for others. The disciples felt a profound shift within them as they absorbed this truth. They had always thought that their worth, their duty, was tied to their ability to serve endlessly. But Jesus was showing them another way, a way that did not demand constant sacrifice but called for a deeper, more sustainable form of service. James, the practical one among them, asked, "But how, Lord, do we find this balance in our daily lives? How do we ensure that we are neither too ambitious nor too complacent?" Jesus stood, motioning for the disciples to follow him as he began walking along a quiet path that led deeper into the hills. As they walked, the stars began to peek through the twilight sky, casting a gentle light over the landscape. "There is a rhythm to all things," Jesus said, his voice blending with the sounds of the evening. "The sun rises and the sun sets. The tides come in and the tides go out. The seasons change, each with its purpose. Just as the world moves in rhythm, so must you." The disciples walked in silence, reflecting on his words, the rhythm of their footsteps falling in sync with one another. There was something peaceful about the simplicity of walking with Jesus, just being present in the moment. When you live in rhythm, Jesus continued, you will find that there is a time for everything. A time to work, a time to rest, a time to strive, and a time to simply be. You must learn to listen to your heart, to the quiet voice within that tells you when it is time to push forward and when it is time to step back. By now, they had reached the top of a hill that overlooked the vast expanse of the valley below. The lights from the village twinkled like stars on earth, and the sound of the wind rustling through the trees filled the air. Jesus turned to his disciples, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the moon. "Look at the world around you," he said, gesturing to the valley. "It does not rush, yet it accomplishes all it needs. The trees grow in their own time. The rivers flow at their own pace. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." The disciples stood in awe, the beauty of the scene before them mingling with the truth of Jesus' words. They felt a deep peace settling over them, a peace that came not from the absence of work but from the understanding that they were part of something much greater. Thomas, who often wrestled with doubt, finally spoke. "Master, I fear that if we stop, if we rest, we might miss something important. How can we be sure that we are doing enough?" Jesus stepped closer to Thomas, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Thomas, my beloved friend, do you not see? The very act of resting, of trusting in the rhythm of life, is a form of faith. When you rest, you are not stopping the world, you are aligning yourself with its natural flow. Trust that God's plan for you will unfold, not because of how much you do, but because of who you are becoming. Your worth is not measured by your achievements, but by the love you carry in your heart." The disciples felt the weight of these words, each of them reflecting on their own fears, their own doubts, their own struggles with ambition. They realized now that true greatness was not found in constant striving, but in living in harmony with themselves, with others, and with God. As the night deepened, they sat together on the hilltop, the stars twinkling above them, feeling the presence of something much greater than themselves. Jesus, sitting among them, radiated a peace that seemed to flow into their very souls. For the first time in a long while, the disciples were not thinking about the next task, the next mission, the next challenge. They were simply present, resting in the truth that they were enough, just as they were. They understood now that their journey was not about proving themselves or achieving greatness. It was about walking in balance, embracing both their ambition and their need for rest, their desire to serve and their need for peace. And as they sat together, side by side, under the vast expanse of the night sky, they felt a deep, abiding joy. It was a joy that came not from accomplishment, but from the knowledge that they were loved, that they were worthy, and that they were part of a greater plan. One that did not require them to sacrifice their well-being, but invited them to live fully, freely, and in harmony with the world around them. And in that moment, they knew that they had found the true balance between ambition and well-being, a balance that would guide them for the rest of their lives. This is end of the story. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.